grade, I decided to enter in my school's science fair. And guess what I made? A volcano that exploded when you put baking soda in it. And guess what about 5 other students in my class made? A volcano that exploded when you put baking soda in it. Now, this story reminds me of the quote I received today, said by Ralph Waldo Emerson. Do not go where the path may lead. Go instead where there is no path and leave a trail. I think this quote is trying to tell us that we shouldn't follow what everyone else does. We shouldn't follow the crowd. But instead, we should create a trail. We should create change. But the sad reality is that we as humans, we don't really like to embrace change or change things up. So to look at this, we're going to go through 3 points of analysis. First, let's look at why we don't like change, and that's because of the ambiguity effect. That why we like to go down the same path over and over again and not make any new trails. Next, let's look at a company that had the ambiguity effect and decided to go down the same path. And finally, let's look at a man on how even though he wanted to take the path that everyone else took, but ultimately he decided to create numerous trails for himself so that he can do the impossible. First, let's look at why we aren't the biggest fans of change and why we don't like to experience new trails. And that's because of the ambiguity effect. The ambiguity effect is whenever we don't like to experience new things. We don't like to try things that we are unfamiliar with. Now, just like as me in the science fair, I knew a volcano was reliable, so I decided to stick with what I knew because I fell victim to the ambiguity effect. I didn't try something new. I didn't go out of the box. Now, let's look at a company that also fell victim to the ambiguity effect and didn't create a new trail for themselves. Let's look at Blockbuster. Now, back in the ancient days, when people had to rent DVDs to watch movies and other TV shows, Blockbuster was the biggest store that rented these on the market. They were basically the top of the line. And they had the chance to buy Netflix, which was a digital streaming platform. And guess what Blockbuster said? They said no, because they liked the trail, the path that they were going on, the path that they had taken over and over again. And they thought that, oh, Netflix, a digital video market, like that wasn't gonna work. But long story short, Blockbuster is now bankrupt while Netflix is thriving and they are one of the top streaming platforms in the world. Next, let's look at Steve Jobs, the founder of one of the biggest tech companies in the world. Now, did you know that Steve Jobs was actually a college dropout? He never finished college and he felt like a major failure at that point in his life. He didn't know where he was going to go or what he was going to do, but he created Apple. And fast forward a couple years, he got kicked out from the company that he created. And at that point, he felt even lower. He thought, oh, wow, I should probably just get a minimum wage job. But he had the smallest bit of determination. He wanted to create a new trail for himself. So he created Pixar, the first ever movie company that used computer animations. And he was actually one of the creators of Toy Story. So today, when I received the quote, do not go where the path may lead, go instead where there is no path and leave a trail, I looked at it as how we shouldn't follow the status quo. We shouldn't do what everyone else is doing, but create change and embrace it. And we looked at first why we as humans, we don't like change, and that's because of the ambiguity effect. Next, we looked at Blockbuster, how they kept on going down the same path and didn't create new trails and therefore went bankrupt. And finally, we looked at Steve Jobs, how even though he had many hard times in his life, he created trails for himself and became successful in the end. So I challenge you, judge that next time in life when you feel like you feel like giving up, create the change. Be the change you want to see in the world and create new trails.